Hey, everybody. We are going to quickly discuss the seven C's of communication. And what you need to understand with the seven C's of communication is that this is the basis for well written messages, regardless of where you are writing them, whether it's emails, letters, and your schoolwork. And we're going to be practicing all of these forms of communication in class. So before we begin, make sure you've already gotten a copy of your notes sheet from the Resource Center so that you can make sure that you have all of the information and can get your notes signed off on. So you might be asking yourself, why is this important? It seems like, everyone thinks they already know how to write. But remember that every time you communicate with someone, you have a purpose, you have a desire to have a goal achieved. And so you should always keep this in mind when you are working. So when you write a message, you should be attempting to answer the following questions. First of all, why am I writing? If you are not clear on what it is you want from this communication, you are not going to be able to clearly express what it is that you want the other person to do. Secondly, what are the facts and what do they mean? You want to make sure you're giving as much information as possible to the person that is relevant. And we're going to talk about where that fits in. And then last, what do you want out of this? So think about that first step. Why am I writing? So on your essays, it might be your topic sentence. The what do I want from this in the end is ultimately what you want your reader to do with this information. And so it might be in an essay, a persuasive statement at the very end of your essay, but in business writing, it is always a call to action, something that you want the reader to do with your message. Now, you've probably seen this poster in my room. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on it, but we will talk about this center box for a moment. The seven C's of communication apply to all forms of communication, whether you're writing an email, giving a presentation, if it is a job interview, or if you're chairing a meeting. And knowing these seven C's can help you make sure that you have a complete and coherent letter to send to whoever you are communicating with. So let's start with that word clear. This is a message that is easy to understand and cannot be misinterpreted. It's fairly straightforward. There's not much to go in here. But again, make sure you identify your purpose for writing and that you use words that you and your audience are familiar with. I see a lot of students attempt to use big words that they've never used before. Forget your thesaurus exists, because unless you actually know for certain that the word you are using is exactly what you want it to be, you should not be using it. Make sure that you're using words that you are comfortable using. Secondly, avoid complex sentences. You want to make sure that every single sentence is very simple and straightforward. Avoid jargon, idioms, or technical terms unless your audience understands them. If you are a welder and you are sending a message to your boss to explain how the current project is going, you're free to use the jargon and technical terms to your heart's desire. But if you are sending it to a customer who might not understand the world of welding very well, you want to make sure that they are getting the clear message. So in case you're unaware, jargon is a term that means job-specific terms used among people within a particular field that may not be understood by others. And idioms are a group of words that have a meaning not related to the words themselves. So if you think of the phrase, it's raining cats and dogs, we know that that means it is raining really, really hard, but someone who is from, say, a foreign country might not be very familiar with that particular phrase. The next word is concise, and this literally means using the fewest words necessary to convey your message. You should only have one purpose per message. One of the things that drives me insane is when I get an email where there are 6 action steps that need to be taken care of, and they might be unrelated to what the topic or the topic line of the email is. And so I won't know how to find that message later. I won't know how to go back and look for it because it's not easy to find. So make sure, especially with emails, that you're only putting one purpose per message. Secondly, use short sentences that keep your audience's attention, and avoid repetition and redundancy. Now, repetition is very straightforward. You are repeating the same idea in the same words. Redundancy means that you're repeating the same idea, but with different words. Don't use 10 words when 5 will do. This is kind of contrary to what people think in academic writing, where you have a tendency to think, oh, I've got to fluff out this paragraph. I need X number of words. No, 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 no. That is not the goal. The goal is to add in content, not add in words. So if you have your message very simply and straightforwardly said, you will have fewer words. And avoid extra information. If your message is about the company picnic that's coming up, don't add in messages or content about the Christmas party that you're going to be having in December. That is a completely different issue. So the next C is concrete. You're writing a specific, logically organized, and confident. So you need to demonstrate that you really know what you're talking about. And the best way to do that is to make sure that you're using precise language. This is words that are specific in their meaning. Don't be wishy-washy. Use specific evidence or facts from your sources. So you want to make sure that you are going back and using information that you can verify. You want to provide examples when it is helpful to do so, and avoid words that suggest that you are uncertain about something. Words like could be, maybe, perhaps make it seem as though you are not sure and therefore you cannot attest to the information you're providing. This one seems like it's fairly straightforward. The next C is correct. Information and all writing conventions are without error. Now, of course, you want to keep in mind who your audience is. In some cases, if you're texting your friends, it doesn't matter how many errors you have in there. If anything, they'll find it funny. But when you are communicating on a professional level, and school is a professional level, that is the goal of school, is to get you ready for your profession. You want to make sure that everything is correct. So use Grammarly to help you fix issues with spelling, grammar, and punctuation. And there will be a video coming up real soon to show you how to add Grammarly if you haven't already done that. And double check your facts. This is super important. If you are putting information into a letter or an email, you want to make sure that the correct information is there. Triple check spellings of names and places. When somebody sees that their name has been misspelled in a message, they will not be happy. They are going to feel somewhat slighted that you didn't bother to check that. And if you are including the name of a place, you want to make sure that you're accurate. Think about how many places you've been where the spelling of maybe one restaurant is slightly different than the spelling of another restaurant with a very similar name. If you say we're going to meet at D Sopranos and you have one spelled with a D apostrophe and the other one spelled with a D-I Sopranos, it's going to make a difference. And keep in mind, this is going to affect your credibility. Errors suggest that you're careless and that you will not be reliable when it matters. The next C is coherent. This literally means sticking together. Everything within the message sticks together. So the message can be understood, makes sense, and flows logically. You don't have any places where your reader is going to go, what? What did he just say? You want to make sure that it can be completely understood. Keep in mind, you'll need to organize your points very carefully. Proofread your sentences and your paragraphs. It's even a good idea to have somebody else quickly proofread your message. So Mrs. Lesperance and I do this pretty frequently. I will write an email, I will show it to her before I send it to make sure that I do not have any issues in there that we've been talking about. Make sure that your tone, style, and language throughout the message are consistent, and that you don't be super friendly in one place and overly formal in another within that same message. And with that in mind, make sure that all messages on the same topic are consistent. So as long as you have a consistent style, tone, and language throughout all of the emails that go back and forth in a particular chain, you should be fine. So if I'm going to send an email to Mrs. Lesperance on what we're going to be doing this coming weekend, I'm going to, maybe be more friendly. But if I'm sending her messages about the progress a student is making, that's a different topic and requires a different tone and style. So you want to pay attention to what your message is about. Next one is complete. And this means that the message has all the information necessary for your audience to respond favorably. Now, this also seems pretty straightforward. You think you're going to include everything, but it is surprising to me how many times it is easy to misunderstand what the message that you're getting. So, for one example, this just happened today. I was meeting up with somebody. They said, I'm leaving work now. I'll see you in a half an hour. Well, I didn't see when they sent that message. So I texted back, what time is that? And they responded with, that'll be around 6:30. So the idea is you want to make sure that you've got complete information within that message, even when it seems like a simple thing. So make sure all the necessary details are included so you don't have any confusion. Double check the information. If you, for example, are planning let's go back to that picnic. You're planning a picnic. Make sure that you include the time, the place, and how you are going to know who is bringing what for that picnic. This is really important. So that you don't have any confusion. The next C is courteous. So this one also seems like it should make sense, but it is sometimes really, really hard to be professional, considerate, respectful, open, and honest. All of these things can sometimes be difficult to do. Sometimes we're angry. Sometimes we are not happy with a situation, but you have to consider how your message will be received by your audience. Even if your message is unpleasant, even if you know you're going to disagree with your audience, and even if you are angry, because ultimately you want to achieve a purpose. So if you have a respectful message, you are more likely to get what you want. Now, it seems like it can be difficult to be both professional, considerate, and then also open and honest. But remember, you don't have to be rude to be open and honest. All right, guys, those are all of your notes for this particular note sheet. Remember that we are going to follow the same process with every note sheet that we do. You're going to show your notes to Mrs. Lesperance or Mrs. Costanzo. One of us will sign off on that. Then you're going to take your image to the front, to the camera, and make sure that you take images of the front and back of your note sheet and submit it to Schoology so that you have a copy online, you have a copy on paper, and we can verify that we met and discussed your notes. And then move on to the next activity in this lesson so that you can practice the 7 C's. Have a great day.